Hello, everybody.
Hello.
start with a tune or two and, you know, see if anybody has questions, if you want to open it up now. I'm down to do that, down to play some more. It's our time, you know, so if anybody wants to start talking about something, now's a good time.
Is that a signature guitar?
It is not. This is a 1527. I think it was discontinued around 2012 or something like that. I got one of the last ones, and it's been my workhorse for a long time.
You swapped the pickups on that?
Yes, this is 5766 set from EMG. Yes. I'm sorry? I am. Yeah, she's awesome. She's obviously a hero and everything, and yeah, she is. She's a great player. You know, her hair is still pretty big. You know, like I love that about her. Like she's still rocking it. But no, she's awesome. She's been like very supportive of me. Like ever since I don't remember when we met. It was several years ago now. But when I got the Cirque de Soliel Michael Jackson gig, she was very supportive of that and very, very cool about it. And yeah, so.
I want a guitar from her. I talked about some Pontieri and I want a guitar.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool.
How come all the best guitars are all discontinued?
You know, that's a really good question.
Guess what? They're not hanging on these walls. They're all discontinued.
No, listen, you know, I wish I had the answer to that question.
That's the stuff.
Yes.
Is there a story in your background when you started, some of your training, etc.?
Sure, yeah. So I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I'm the only girl, so I kind of grew up around a house that was very musical. Not everybody played instruments, but everybody was into music, and I got exposed to a lot of different kinds of music that, you know, maybe other kids growing up in the 90s wouldn't have, you know, like a lot of classic rock and Queen and Pink Floyd and that type of thing. And I wanted to play guitar because my older brother Ethan played guitar, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So when I was 7, my parents got me my first like 3/4 size little nylon string guitar. I wasn't very good at practicing it, you know, but it was like the only instrument that was small enough for me to be able to try to do something with. I was a very small child, but it was a few years later, around when I was 10, 11, 12, I discovered Extreme and Nuno Betancourt, and that kind of changed my life. That made me want to play the electric guitar, and I think the big difference about that is it made, not that I had the wrong reasons before, but the fact that I was listening to music that had a lot of guitar in it, that made me want to practice in a different way, you know, because now it was the difference between like, oh, here's this instrument that I like and it's fun to play or whatever, and actually like the music that you're listening to and thinking like, well, now I want to learn this because that's what I'm actually listening to. And for me, that was the shift that made me practice. Like once the stuff that I was really into listening to, you know, had a lot of guitar on it, it kind of compelled me to start picking it up, and from there the rest is kind of history. You know, I learned a lot about a lot of guitar players, instrumental music from there and everything, and I eventually went to Berklee College of Music and discovered a lot more music at that point and everything too. Yeah, and that was kind of the beginning of my path. So yeah, yes, and then go ahead.
Is there particular reasons you prefer this brand?
Yes, there's many reasons, you know. So for me and the kind of music that, I mean, I play different things, but for the bulk of my kind of music, I always use a lot of, I don't say always, but primarily use a lot of gain and, you know, play too many notes. And, you know, my hands are not huge, and, you know, the Ibanez neck shape is kind of very conducive to that, and the sound of the instrument as well. And to me, that's the biggest thing. Aside from the fact that, you know, it's a brand that really does have something for everybody, and I play a lot of different things now, and it doesn't all end with one guitar or 2 guitars, you know. I have a lot of different needs now, which is not something that I necessarily expected early on. So what I love about Ibanez is that they can provide like everything that I need, and a lot of times in 1 or 2 instruments. And you know, I was always a fan of the brand as well. You know, a lot of my heroes play Ibanez. It was always kind of a dream of mine. Actually, my first Ibanez guitar was when I became an endorser. I didn't even have any before, which is kind of crazy. This was my dream guitar, and this is the RG 550 reissue Genesis collection. that they put out last year. And when I heard that was coming out, I was like, okay, I waited for the right thing. I'm here. I gotta have one of these, you know, which is kind of why I've been quite inseparable from it since I got it. But yeah. And you had a question? Yes.
What's your favorite practice riff?
My favorite practice riff?
What's your go-to?
I don't even really have one. And I'll tell you why. It's just because, like, for me, context is everything. And I've never really been, like, sometimes sound check is, like, my least favorite part of the day just because I have to go and noodle certain things that don't fit any kind of context. So for me, I like finished songs and finished things and jamming the things and stuff like that. So it wouldn't necessarily be, like, a key riff or anything, but, yeah, I try to just treat it as music. And who had a question? Yes, over there.
My name is Paul. I'm the one that asked you to play Rush.
Oh, okay.
I want to know this. When you were on stage with Steve Vai,
I've never been on stage with Steve Vai. No.
there's more than you were on stage with Steve Vai. I don't know your video.
I might have stood on stage with him, but I've never played with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a picture of it, so I was just wondering how you were acting.
Well, if I had been playing, I could tell you it probably would have been very nerve-wracking. But you know something? Steve is someone who has always been so nice to me and just so, like, loving and helpful and all these things. And, you know, I hope that one day we do get to do that. And I can tell you right now that it will be nerve-wracking. So it has been with any other, you know, huge guitar player that I've gotten to meet or play with. But the cool thing about doing something like that a lot of times is, like, you feel nervous up to the actual thing, and then when you're standing there with them is, I think, actually when you're the least nervous, because the thing about musicians like that is they make you comfortable. They know how to, you know, like, they have so much experience. They know how to make things easy for you. You know, for them, it's not a big deal. They know how to be generous and kind of, like, I don't want to say step aside, but, you know, they know how to accommodate and be generous to another musician on stage because that's what they've done all their lives. So as much as I've, like, always gotten really nervous leading up to that stuff, once you go and you do it, you're like, oh, you're so cool, you know, like, that's the easy part in a way, is like, and it ends up always being a lot of fun. So I'm so grateful to that generation for that, because it's a special thing, and I hope it's not like a something that's going to be lost in my generation. So. Yes.
How many Cirque shows did you do?
Close to 700.
And so now, getting back to the nervous thing, like, by show, you know, $6.99, were you starting to not be nervous?
Oh,
or?
I was not really, like, you get desensitized to that real fast.
Because that, you know, you're going full on character, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, like, now when you're Nili Brosh, playing in front of people, you know.
I get more nervous for something like this now, I think, than for Cirque, because, and partially it is because of the character thing, because it really is an escape. It literally is like, I can hide behind this thing, you know, like, nobody knows it's me. I have all this makeup, all this gear and everything, and plus, you know, it's the same show. So it only takes, it doesn't even take 100 out of those 700 to feel like, okay, well, I know what I'm playing, you know what I mean? I know the route, I know where I'm running and when I'm interacting with somebody. That was the beautiful thing about it. Like, you got so comfortable that, like, I actually did like that kind of routine aspect of, like, oh, I'm going to work. I'm not nervous. It's cool. Like, I have my routine. I come home at the end of the night. I play to a lot of people. Did 2 shows. Like, it's great. But it does desensitize you to, you know, what you're really doing, because there's never any change or anything. It's very, like, robotic. So. What
about turning on the Rockstar thing? Like, you know, you get on stage and then all of a sudden, you know, you're, you know.
It all
like I saw your video the other day, your new release, right? And, you know, you're in there and you're walking around. Do you feel silly when you're in there playing to a backing track? And
I don't feel silly.
Like, do you feel like you're doing an act?
I mean, you do feel like that's what it is, you know what I mean? You are, and especially because, like, in that show, there's no band, you know? The 2 musicians in the show are characters. So the whole point is that. I mean, I hate to say it, but to them, you know, the emphasis is on that less than the playing, you know? Yeah. So it didn't really feel forced, because that was my job, and, you know, in that environment, it's like, that's what you do. And plus, you're so freaking decked out. It's like, what's one more movement here or there, you know what I mean? I think what's hard about it is, like, doing something like this, it's just, it doesn't always make sense to me to put on that same kind of production or show. Right. It's like, well, this is not maybe the right context, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, yes, go ahead.
Quick question.
kind of gauge of strings do you use?
So I use standard 9 to 42 set, and then my 7th string, if I'm playing that, is a 54.
None of my guitar heroes play more than 010 anyway.
No, what's that?
My guitar heroes don't play more than 09, 010.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I really feel like anything more than 9 for me personally is more of a workout than I need to be doing. Anybody else for now, or should we play some more music?
Play.
Okay, so you mentioned my new single, Primal Feels, which has been out for like about a week. Thanks for the support back there. It's from my new album, Spectrum, which is slated to be out around November. And we're actually going to be taking pre-sales here later tonight. I'll be signing some stuff and hanging out if you guys want to stick around. But the single's been out for about a week. There's a music video that goes along with it. It's called Primal Feels, and after I check my tuning, I will play that for you. Don't want to be out for that. Close enough. other questions? Yes.
Can you tell me what your practice day would be like? What are you working on?
Sure.
Yeah.
It varies.
How long do you go?
Yeah. You know, growing up, I've had different lengths of days, let's say, you know what I mean? Now I try to there's so many other things I need to do that I really try to get whatever I need to do done with practice in 2 or 3 hours, or I, kind of start to get burned. I also don't feel like I really, we don't really need more than that if you're concentrating and practicing well. But for me, it's, right now it just kind of depends on like what I'm getting prepared for, like whatever gig I have coming up, or if I need to learn a new set of something, or if I'm, doing a video today, or writing something new, or whatever, recording. To me, it is all practice, you know what I mean? Like I remember growing up that a lot of kids felt like, or peers, felt like, oh, if I'm not like, working on this thing today, or if I'm just jamming, like it's not real practice, I'm just playing guitar, I'm not practicing. And to me, that's not where it is, I think as long as you have your hands on the fretboard, you're doing something right.
Do you work scales or improvise a lot of your stuff?
Well, so it depends. So, I do, regardless of what I'm working on, I do try to balance things, Personally, I already get bored if I'm working on one thing anyway, but, it just keeps you from going insane. But just for the sake of, like, keeping all your chops up in different things, so I might try to balance, like, a little review of things that I know, like tunes that I know, or whatever, technique practice, maybe some improv if I need to learn a new song or something, The hard part about it for me is that, like, it's very hard for me to, like, tell myself, okay, I'm going to stick to, like, the 20 minutes of this, and then I'm going to move to something else, because if you start, like, really getting into what you're doing, and it's just like, oh, now I got to move on to the next thing. That's really hard for me to tear myself apart, but I also have the opposite problem of, like, well, I can get really obsessive about stuff, and then, like, before I know it, like 5 hours have been going by. I practiced the same damn thing and like nothing else, and it's just like, all right, maybe it's time to put the guitar down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, balance is key. As hard as it is, it's a very good reflection to anything else in life. It's just like balance works, and it's one of the harder things to achieve. So maybe try and on a more global scale, like, okay, even if I focus on one thing today, then maybe the next day will be something else, and maybe that will be the form of the balance, Yes?
Have you ever come face to face with one of the heroes? They got to be compromising with the steel. So when I come to say that, you can say that it's like on 17. So I would do a thing faculty and go to homes. You know what I mean? They don't stay with
Yeah. I know, yeah. I've been fortunate to get to meet and play with or become friends with a lot of my heroes, and it's always a surreal thing, But I'm also blessed that like so many of my heroes are nice, kind, giving people, and because sometimes you never know, you know what I mean? And it can be heartbreaking when you're young, or when you really care about the artist or whatever. So I'm very grateful that I haven't had any bad experiences, pretty much, and I'm very blessed to have met so many of my heroes. So I know not everybody's experiences like that.
So definitely haven't met you.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. Yes, go ahead. Well, the good thing about the flamethrower is that it's only at the very end of the solo, and I'm kind of, huh? It's not this guitar. Yeah. So the part with the flame throwing is in the beginning of the show. It's during the beaded solo. It's like at the end of the beaded solo, and at first I was like, I can't believe they start. It's this. It's like the firework is basically at the back of the headstock, and there's a team that's operating it upstairs, kind of watching the show and everything. I don't have to operate it, or didn't have to operate it. I just basically had to make sure that they teach you the blocking and where you need to stand and how you need to point and which angle you need to point at, which becomes very much muscle memory. So as you're playing, you're walking backwards, you're getting in position, you're playing the last thing, it just goes off. I always just make sure that it is going off. And yeah, there's nothing like unusual about it. It's just like they know how to rig everything to like what they need it to be, and actually not make it like hopefully too difficult for you. So for me, it was really just the training in the beginning of how to get the muscle memory of where I'm at and where I'm standing. But as far as the playing goes, it didn't really get in the way. And I just it's not like I had a problem with it, but every once in a while, you just think of the responsibility of what you're actually doing. You're standing there shooting 30 feet of fire, and it's just like, I try not to think about it too much, because if you do it, and it's just like, okay, yeah, that's very real, you know what I mean? It's a lot on my shoulders, so I try not to think about it. But there's so much safety in place too. It's like, that's why there's a team watching. It's like, if there's anybody that's standing where they're not supposed to be, or happen to be passing for whatever reason, it just doesn't go off, But I think I can count on one hand the amount of times that happened. Like, most of the time, there's probably been like 5 or 6 times where it didn't fire because something was wrong. But for the most part, that show is so dialed in. That's the whole thing about it. It's like, there is no weak link in that chain, or you're just not there. Everybody has to be so professional on top of their job and everything, or it's just not going to happen. So, yes.
Which amp are you using from
So what I'm doing now is I'm using the Headrush pedal board, and it's kind of like it's like the Axe Effects type thing, where it's like an all-encompassing solution for tone, and I just have it going front to the house and to the monitor, and everything that you're hearing is coming from that. I have I have a signature series of tones with them, and I'm using some of my. I just basically built like kind of like a set list, they call it, where you just each one of these is a different tone, but it's already like I kind of planned it for the tour so that I have every sound that I need. But it's
that you like from there, the simulator.
It doesn't work. I don't know like exactly which amp is on each of these. I've just spent so much time like crafting the tones. It's not the way the system works. It looks like a signal chain where you can see like the pedals and everything. So it's not exactly like you are choosing an amp first and everything, but I didn't like spend too much time like focusing on that. I just kind of built the tone and moved it up, and I would have to look like what I'm using. But for me, tone is very much like by ear, like I know what I'm going for, and I know when I hear it, and I know how to kind of dial it in to get it to that point, and after that I just kind of forget what I did.
Don't even bother to know which amp is simulating.
Not really. I mean, I can look and tell you, but no. I mean, I don't. It's just like, to me, that's the afterthought in a way. It's like other things. It's like, if I have to explain it, then I go and I figure it out. But for my purposes, it's like, okay, it's here. It's my tool that I'm working with, and that's it. I'd rather just go and play the music, type of thing.
The rig for Primal Fears, is that on your in your artist pack?
Yeah.
It is in there?
Well, when I recorded it with my PVJSX, so it's not exactly the same tone.
But the one you just used now?
Yes, that's on it's called Nili Lead 1, and it's on that artist pack.
I've got it. I've got that.
So it's the exact same thing that you're hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes?
Tell us a little bit about your composition. The way you hear a lovely melody like you just played, and then start working on it, or are you just sort of trying some different chords out when it comes to you?
So ideally, it's the former, yeah. So over the years, I've started hearing more and more stuff in my head, and that is how I hope to be writing always. It's not how every song came about, and it's not necessarily how every section of every song came about, maybe, but it is where I try to start from and stay around as much as I can, because to me, that's just like, it's the purest form of writing, It's like it's the kind that I tend to judge the least, and I judge myself a lot. So for me, it's like if I heard something in my head, it's a little bit easier for me to accept it as like, okay, well, even if it's not the greatest thing yet, or it needs polishing or whatever, it's definitely what I meant, because it's the thought that I heard in my head. So just with that coming from like a pure place, I tend to give myself less crap about it, let's say. But, that's not to say that things don't need to be workshopped after that. And a lot of times for me, it's like, even if I'm hering the melody, or even if I'm hearing the melody in the chords, or maybe a couple of pieces of the arrangement that I need or whatever. For the most part, the big bulk of the work is really just sitting down and demoing it and programming the other instruments to the best of my ability, which is not that I give it to a producer and the players that make it what it is, but that to me is the bigger challenge. It's like if I'd heard the stuff that comes through, but deciding like how to make the full picture, sometimes that's the part that's a little bit foggy and needs more attention, but still better than than all the frustration you can get sometimes when you're trying to write another way or something's not working and you're really trying to force it. Like I'd much rather be working on the arrangement if I'd already heard it. Yeah.
Was there a lot of music theory at school, and are you using that now when you're doing your composing? Is that part of how you approach it?
It's not so much how I approach. I try to use it as like either like to check my work or to troubleshoot something that's not working or to understand what I'm doing. But that's been the way that I've always wanted to use theory. Is like for me, I started playing a lot of stuff by ear. That's how I learned stuff. It's the quickest way that I've always learned stuff, and now by far because I've just spent so many hours in my life doing it. So when I was a teenager, I got to the point where I was doing a lot of stuff by ear and I was playing a lot of stuff, but I couldn't understand. I had no idea what I was doing at all, And I know that a lot of people feel that way. And for me, it couldn't go very far. Like I needed to understand, So that's where the role of theory came in for me. Like I just wanted to make sure that I can understand what I'm doing and I can piece it together, and that just ended up being the way that I use it now. Like I try not to write from there or practice from there, but it's more like I start from, I always want to go by the ear and by the musicality, and then kind of like, okay, now if I need to go back and check what I'm doing or fix something or try to troubleshoot something else, that's where that knowledge comes in. Okay. Anyone else for now? Yes?
Gotta get one question every time.
That's all good.
What's that 7th string tune to?
It's a low B in my case. That's the standard tuning. I mean, there are a lot of people who, do a drop A, or there's all kind of different tuning, but I use the standard tuning most of the time, and unless a gig calls for something else.
So like a bass one's put a B up there.
Yeah. So.
That's what that.
No, that's a great question. There's nothing dumb about that, So, anybody else, or should we play another song? Okay, we'll play another song. Okay, so this is from my last album. This is called A Matter of Perception. What else is on your minds? Yes.
You said you got into guitar because of your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Does he still play?
Yes, he's a professional musician. His name is Ethan Brosh. He actually comes up here a lot with his band, and he does a lot of shred-tastic kind of music.
Is there any sort of competition between you guys?
I don't know. You know, we've gone in separate paths. You know, several years ago already. You know, and we haven't gotten a chance to do as much as we have in the past. But I wouldn't say that. You know, because it's just like I kind of went the more fusion route, and he went the more like 80s shredder route. So there's enough for everybody, kind of thing. You know. Anybody else? Would we like to hear some more music instead? Okay. So while I switch guitars here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my new album. So the title, like I said, is Spectrum, and the reason for that is because it's a literal spectrum of styles. So I came up with a bunch of stuff. Suspense. Came up with a bunch of songs that were all very different. Come on. And didn't really seem like they belong on one record. You know, there was like some Spanish stuff, some Parisian stuff, some, you know, fusion stuff, and I kind of sat there and I was just like, you know, this doesn't belong on one record. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this, you know, and then I kind of thought about it. God damn it. As I'm giving my spiel. I thought about it, and what I realized is, you know, at least one of those genres has always something in common with at least another one of those genres that is on that record. So what I realized is they can really blend from one to the next, you know, using some sort of commonality. Even if it seems like it doesn't have anything in common with something else, it usually does, because music, as it turns out, is kind of all the same and uses all the same elements and everything. So that's why the record is called Spectrum. It's literally fading from one song to the next and starts in one place and ends up in a completely different place. And, you know, one of the great things about these instruments is that they definitely really accommodate for that, you know, like, even though this guitar gets typecast a little bit for what it looks like, you can see with this next tune that it can really accommodate different things. And that's, like I mentioned before, you know, one of the reasons why I'm such a big Ibanez supporter, because even though I have to contain different things, this is an instrument that definitely provides for that. So, while I tune, we're going to play a little bit of an example of that with one of my tunes on my new album. And you know, the cool thing about this clinic tour is that it's really good. Come on. No? It's really good practice for me to just be playing these songs out to an audience really for the first time. So thank you for for being easy on me. And this is called Solace. I hope you enjoy. So anything else we'd like to talk about today? Yes.
I got a question again.
Sure.
I notice when you're tuning, you always have the intonation, don't you ever talk about your tuning, what's the usually it's talking about?
Yeah, so that's kind of the point of this locking system. So when you see these locking nuts on nut, the whole point is so that you lock them and the guitar does stay fairly in tune. Another thing that I really love about Ibanez is the guitars are very sturdy and they do maintain their tuning in a great way. So basically what these fine tuners give you is the ability to compensate for the difference for the times where it's just a little bit out. But the good thing about this is like it's never like you pick it up and it's just like, whoa, like this is crazy to the point where I really need to employ these. Unless something is wrong, you know. So if something went wrong, sometimes after flying, that's when things happen. But you know, you just open these up if you need to like start from scratch and kind of retune the whole thing. But the fine tuners are really there just to make sure that you're good to go. Yeah, that's how it works. Yes, and then you. No, go ahead. Go ahead, miss. I'm sorry? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I don't, sorry. I'm probably not old enough to have had a guitar or have been maybe around then. But you had a question.
Yeah, I see that you have basically blonde wood on those necks. Do you have a neck wood preference?
You know, it certainly looks like I prefer maple today. I have all kinds of guitars of different configurations. I do have some rosewood necks and everything, and it's a crapshoot for me. You know, like I think every type of wood, especially for the neck, gives you like a little bit of a different tonal character, and these are a little bit maybe brighter than the rosewood, but my tone in general kind of tends to go over to a little bit darker anyway, so I find that sometimes these balance it out. And you know, with a lot of the maple neck guitars, I really like the way that the neck feels and everything too, in response to your hand. You know, because wood is a living, breathing thing, and people sometimes overlook that. You know, it can really, like when you really spending a lot of time with different guitars, like you really feel the little minute differences. So I like to have a little bit of something of everything.
And is it like extra large frets you're using?
A lot of times they are, yes. Did you have a question?
Pickups. What kind of pickups do you prefer?
Again, it's like, it depends on the situation. I've been using EMGs for maybe 5 years now, which is crazy. I wasn't necessarily I wasn't trying to make the switch over to active, but their guy kind of sold me on it very quickly with the set that's in this guitar, actually. It was kind of sold over to me as the active set for the passives player, which is exactly how I feel. Yeah. But a lot of times, you know, these are the stock pickups that come in this guitar, and sometimes the passives thing does give you a little bit more dynamic range to play around with, and that's sometimes something that I miss, even though this is so fluid and, you know, like just buttery. Yes. So different things for different things, and you know, I think that's why it's so hard for a lot of people to create like one guitar that has everything in it, you know, because how are you really going to accommodate for that? So I try to travel as light and as practically as possible, and usually that doesn't end with less than 2 guitars, even if it's just because you need a backup, you know. But you know, at the end of the day, like I feel like I adapt. I get used to certain instruments that I spend like a little bit more time with than others. So it's literally like, you know, the last few months I've been playing one of my other guitars, and I was like, well, I'm going to take this guitar on tour, so I better get used to it again. But then at the end, they all kind of start to feel the same too. Not the same, but like, you know, I feel like I just get used to whatever's in my hands for a little bit. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes. The necks? The necks are stock, yeah. I feel like, you know, Ibanez does such a great job. I don't need to do anything to the necks. And personally, like I almost like I wish somebody could explain the scallop thing to me. Not because like there's anything wrong with it. I've used it. I don't understand. Like, do you know what the reason is? Like, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? So like to me, it felt different. It made certain things a little bit easier, but it just I wish I knew what the reason was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you know something? It's like that's not the reason Ingve's Ingve. So maybe it was just a thing to get a bunch of people to try it to sound like Ingve or something. I don't know. Yes.
So you've gotten to play with some of like the greatest musicians in the world. So
Somehow, I don't know how I.
I mean, you earned it.
Well, thank you. Oh, thanks. I duped them into doing it. They let me stand next to them.
So, I mean, like Tony McAlpine, and so what's been your greatest on-stage experience, and then going forward with the Purple?
My greatest on-stage experience. It's so hard to quantify these things, you know, because like there's so many. I'm blessed. I've had so many special moments, and they're all very different. But you know, some of the tours that I've done with Tony were some of really like the nicest times in my life. And he's taught me so much. I mean, he pretty much gave me my first gig, you know, other than the Iron Maidens. And I really felt like at that time, like I was so young, I was very fresh out of college, and I really felt like somebody had to be the dude that would take a chance on me, and like for it to have been him was like a really big thing for me as a fan. And you know, I just learned so much from him. So we've always had a lot of fun on stage. But I think actually sitting in with the Aristocrats, which was like in 2011. That I remember like thinking that night, like this was like the nicest night of my life. And it was at Berklee College of Music where I'd gone, you know, in front of like 1,000 guitar players and everything, and I was just kind of like, this is weird being on the other side of this now, but it was a cool experience. And as far as the future, I mean, the two players that come to mind are Nuno Bettencourt and Steve Lukather. Those would be amazing. It's like, come to the next clinic and maybe that'll be the answer, you know. But, yeah. Sure, yes.
What's a funny story of something that hasn't been on tour?
You know what? I'll pick not on tour, but like when I was doing the Cirque gig, I was injured for a little bit, and I came back, and the first show that I came back in, the very end of the show has like the solo guitarist moment where you're standing on this huge like platform riser thing, and they like bring you up from the basement like to the stage. And like in a Cirque show, I don't know if you've been, but like usually there's a ton of stuff going on, you know, like it's just like an annihilation of the senses. So it's like the one point in the show where I'm the only thing on stage, and I'm like projected on all the side fills and everything, and it's like there's no way to fake it, you know. And the whole thing, like as I'm going up, like starts with like you know. And so I broke a string doing that. And of course, like the string breaks and the entire rest of the guitar is out of tune now. And it's the B string, it's the second string. I really need that to play the black or white riff. And I'm just like, oh no, you know, and I'm up there and like I have to play my solo or whatever, and it was just like everything was so out of tune that it doesn't matter what I played, it just was not gonna sound good. And I was just like, ah. And it was one of those times where like everybody always thought that I wasn't really playing because, you know, you don't see a band, you don't see an amp, like everything is so hidden and rigged to be perfectly, you know, show presented and everything, that my saving grace to that day was just kind of like, well, they'll know I was really playing, you know, because there was no hiding behind that. But the great thing about doing 10 shows a week is that like you do get over it really fast, you know, like the next one is coming right up. So that was always the saving grace of like, well, something happened.
How often were you changing strings?
I don't know. I don't know how often my tech was doing it. That was another part of that job. Is like those guitars lived at work, stayed at work, had their own person taking care of them. I would just go to work with a backpack, and it was like, I'll never have a gig like that again. I'll never have it that easy, you know, like not carrying any gear. Like, I mean, to be fair, like carrying it physically during the shows, kind of like my neck is responding this second as I'm talking to you. But there were definitely those parts.
Is that your personal head rush?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
What strings do you use, and did you change that as well?
I don't think it was the strings' fault, but I use the Dean Markley Blue Steels. Yes.
I'm a diehard Toto fan.
Oh, nice.
I know all the songs. So why Steve Lukather? What is it about Steve Lukather?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, like, I love his melodicism and I love his sense of, like, you know, he brings in things from bebop and, like, you know, chromatic lines and things like that. He always has great tone, and, you know, to me, like, my generation is, in a way, I don't want to say we're not going to see players like that, but the type of career that he had is something that is just probably not possible anymore, you know, to have been, like, a session musician for everybody, to have written that many hit songs with his band that he started in high school, and to do, you know, everything else that he's done, like, we're not gonna see that anymore, you know, so I think it takes a special kind of musicians, and that generation had so many of them, and he's one of my favorites. And also when I went to the Guitar Center in Hollywood, he's the only person whose hands were, like, small enough to be close to my size. You know, they have all the, like, handprints of everybody, and it's just like, I tried everyone, like, well, Steve Vai has huge hands, Eddie Van Halen has huge hands. Hey, Steve, look at there, cool, I'm not alone. So, but yeah. Yes? Uh-huh. Yes. I don't know any new secrets. They don't tell the artists because they know that we would probably not keep them secret. No, I'm sorry, I can't. But you know what? The great thing about it is, like, man, this last year they came out with so many great things. When I was at NAMM and I had just gotten this guitar, I was like, But no, you know, you never know. And then there's another NAMM coming right up, so we'll see. And yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I couldn't hear the question. I'm really sorry. What about Jimi Hendrix? Yes. Yeah, I'm sure it is, you know. If there's one guy that would cover that well, I think it would be Luke. So, let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, cool. We're almost out of time, so why don't we get a couple more questions in, and then I'll play a last song. How about that? Yes?
Where are you from? Is there a fusion appreciation audience where your hometown is?
That's a great question. I'm originally from Israel, and I think some of that stuff you might be able to hear in my new album. It's not, you know, I don't want to, like, kind of brand it as anything. It's not, like, necessarily Middle Eastern more than anything else, but I have a lot of different influences just coming from that part of the world, and watching, like, you know, even if it's just watching movies or TV shows where it's just like you know, maybe the subject matter will be kind of ethnic, and then the ethnic music gets into that and everything. So I have a lot of different influences from different places, and sometimes I don't even really know where it came from. That's why when I started writing some of these songs, I was just like, I don't know where that chord progression was from, but whatever, you know, like, that's kind of why I'm glad that I was exposed to different things. But my family moved to the U.S. when I was 12. They moved to the Boston area, and I guess that's where the rest of my influences would have come from. But yes. Anybody else? Yes.
When it comes to acoustics, do you play Ibanez as well? Like, is that your choice? Or do you like...
Believe it or not, I do not own an acoustic guitar. The nylon string that I've been playing, and that's on my new album, is a Cordoba. But nothing against acoustics. It's just, I don't know that it's my forte necessarily, as you can see. Anybody else? Yes? Definitely had to practice that. That was not something that was natural to me because I didn't really delve in too deeply into the finger picking coming into that. So it is something that I really had to develop. And it's also something that I came into, like, late enough in my life that I didn't have, like, one specific teacher at the time to, like, really show me if I was doing it right or wrong or whatever. Like, there's very little in my life that I was really self-taught from, or, you know, but that is probably one of the things that I kind of had to figure out myself. And so I don't know if I use it the same way that other people use it, or if there's a right or wrong way, but it is something that, like, I kind of taught myself over time, and was kind of a struggle for me, actually. Anybody else? Okay. All right, how about we play a last song for tonight? So thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I always have such a great time in Canada whenever I'm here. it's been a pleasure. So this is called Silence of Saturday, and in a few minutes, stick around. We'll talk and hang out. All right. Sorry for the delay. Okay. Thank you for coming, Burlington.